Welcome, everyone. I'm Holly Corbett. I'm VP of Content for Consciously Unbiased, a movement to build belonging in the workplace. So I'm very excited for today's conversation, which is about the power of women telling their story. And I'm even more excited to bring this amazing group of women leaders together. As a woman working in the media, this topic is really important and close to my heart because the majority of management positions in media are men. So these are the people who decide which stories get told and who gets
Mhm.
coverage. And only about 27% of editor in chief roles are women, even though 40% of journalists are women. So this Women's History Month, we're amplifying the women who are sharing their stories and using their voices because visibility brings opportunity. And as one of my favorite authors, Liz Lessler, who couldn't be here today because she's writing another book, says, when women tell the story changes. So let's introduce our guests who are doing just that. It's a big group, so thank you all to saying yes to me. We have Bobby Carlton, founder of Innovation Women, Casey Aaron Clark and Julie Foe, co-founders of Vital Voice Training, Dr. Linnell Plummer, best-selling author of The Essential Guide for Counseling Black Women and founder of Onyx Therapy Group, and Cecile Ville, founder and creative director of BF Media Lounge, Deborah Driscoll, also known as Deb D, founder of the Be Her Collective, and Dr. Janice Gassimasari, organizational psychologist whose latest book is Rise and Resist: How to Reclaim Workplace Equity and Justice. And I'm listening to that on Audible, so super excited for that. Our producer, Elila, will drop the book links into the comments for anybody in the audience who is interested in checking them out. So welcome, everyone, to the show. So before we get started, I just was wondering, can each of you share a personal story of why you're passionate about helping more women to use their voice or about amplifying women's stories? Dr. Plummer, do you want to go first?
You know, the therapist in me was about to write some notes, right? In terms of like what are the things that I'm that are most important to me. You know what popped up, and good afternoon, y'all. Good day, good afternoon. I've been so excited to spend time with you all and telling everybody about it. Um, I think for me, it's really a matter of my life being a matter of justice and social justice. And I do that primarily through the realm of mental health and helping people to see themselves, to increase their self-awareness, to feel empowered. And with that being said, women are not always seen as equal. They're not always seen as the most powerful. We're not always given credit for what we can do and what we have already done. We're not always given credit for the fact that all these humans are on the earth because of us, right? Like they wouldn't be here if it wasn't for the power of what we have. And so, just as a matter of justice, it's important to me to dedicate so much of my work to women and to helping women see themselves in the ways that the universe has created them, despite what society has said and the ways that they've tried to oppress us. So for me, it's just a matter of justice. And I'm a woman, right? And so I want to see myself amplified. I want to see my sisters like you all amplified in these spaces as well. So it's a matter of my own self-preservation and the preservation of women just like me, just like those of us that are on the panel today. So that is my passion. And again, hey, and I see the chat moving too. Hey, Toshka, I see you.
Thank you, Dr. Plummer. Bobby, do you want to go next?
Yeah, for me, it became kind of personal. I've worked in placing speakers on stage as part of my job for almost 40 years now. And one day I realized that in the first 20 years of my career, I had never had a female client. I worked in tech for many years, and not having a single woman in 20 years as part of the cadre of people I was putting on stage, especially because I understood the power of being on stage, really was a bit of a slap in the face. So, frankly, I feel like I had a lot to make up for. So, here I am.
Wow, 20 years. That is a long time. Thank you for being here and thank you for the work that you do with Innovation Women. Deb, do you want to go next?
Yeah, hi everybody. So pleased to be here. So for me, again, I think like same with probably all of us here, it feels really deeply personal. But for me, it's been an evolution in my work. So a lot of the work that I do is supporting women to reclaim their intuitive wisdom and bring that into their leadership and into their life. And then I got to a point where I was like, that's not enough. What we actually need is we need to be inside our stories, inside the identity as the main character inside our stories. Because I honestly believe that our world is woven by the stories that we tell and we listen to and that we embody. And so, if we want a new world, we need more of the women not only telling their stories and sharing their stories, but in heroine status, in main character, driving the story forward. So, that was how the Be Her Collective came about in the evolution of my work. I was like, yeah, I'm going to keep working in the magic in supporting women to reclaim their intuitive wisdom. And then what you're going to do about that in driving your story forward and seeing yourself as one of the creators of the new narrative.
Thanks, Deb. Yeah, I mean, really good point in that stories are how we make sense of the world, and they really shape how we see the world. And Cecile, do you want to go next?
Yes, also for me, it was a bit personal to start with because I've been a screenwriter for many years, and with only 23% of women being producers, I couldn't find a home for my stories, and that's why I decided to create my own. But it's interesting what you're saying, Holly, because I think women receive also 26% of news and media stories in general. So it feels that that number is quite, it all makes sense. So for me, it was also finding more positivity because 65% of the content we consume is negative. And with the mere exposure effect, the more we talk about the story, the more we sort of create those stories, then it becomes part of our daily life. And that's why it's so important. If we all decided tomorrow to create those stories and believe in those stories, in a few years we could change the world. So I think based on neuroscience, so I think it's I think it's a wonderful way to do it, and we can all do it as women.
Yeah, we need to get to 51% or 51%
At
of the
least, yes.
population and should be equally represented. Dr. Gassamasari.
Yeah, I'm so glad to be here with you, such amazing women. I think, like I believe Deborah mentioned, or maybe it was Anne Cecile. I think for me, it was deeply personal. I've always had very strong relationships with women growing up. My circle of friends, I just really cherished the girls that I was surrounded with, and the idea of having a daughter always excited me when I was young. My relationship with my mom, and so I know how deeply amazing and just profound and how much knowledge and wisdom women have. And I've always been really fascinated with matrilineal cultures and cultures where women are sort of, it's a little bit different from our society here, our Western society, but cultures that really venerate and honor the woman. Because I think when women are able to lead and are given the tools to lead and are given the reins to lead, really powerful things can happen. And also, like you mentioned, Holly, just seeing, as a writer, seeing the disparities in women who get to tell the stories and women whose stories are covered and highlighted. There's a huge disparity. And also in the work I do as an organizational psychologist, just seeing what women experience in the workplace and being a new-ish mom, seeing what working women go through and all of the challenges that women in the workplace have to navigate as new parents, as new moms. And so I think all of those combined have made me really interested in this topic and helping more women to be able to share their stories and tell their stories because like you mentioned, Holly, our stories are so, so, so powerful.
Thank you. And yeah, thank you. It is Women's History Month and bringing up, I too have this fascination with matrilineal societies. And I actually didn't know till reading Dr. Plummer's book that there were 161 recorded matrilineal societies. And right now I'm in upstate New York, which is like the birthplace of the women's right movement. And it's Haudenosaunee land. And I'm diving into how the women suffered just movement happen because they had a new model of leadership that was more centering men and women in leadership, based on the Native American relationships that they developed. So there was a lot of inspiration learning from different cultures on how, American women could move forward and get the right to vote. So that was a little bit of a tangent, but Casey and Julie, let's hear from you.
Julie and I started Vital Voice training in 2014 at the height of what we like to call the great moral panic over vocal fry. This was like everybody was talking about how annoying and unserious women's voices were, and everyone had advice on what women should be doing and shouldn't be doing in order to be taken seriously in the world. And as an artist, a trained theater performer, the advice that I saw was crap. I knew that. But as a recovering perfectionist and someone who had always been very comfortable using my voice throughout my life, I was the girl with the voice. I was defined by my voice. But I was also really good at hitting the should markers and feeling at that point in my life very rebellious against all of them. Like I was so uninterested in teaching women how to better match societal expectations when all we saw was no matter what you did, you were going to hit a double bind. And those double binds have become such a key part of how we examine women's presence in the world and the way that society expects us to be. So like I come to this as a confident extrovert who sang her first solo in church when she was 4, but who was very controlled by other people's opinions of me for a long time and had this very potent inner director and inner critic. And my journey as an artist was freeing myself from that, still showing up with intention, but showing up with my core values intact and making the impact that I wanted to make. And I wanted to help other women do that. And I was so fortunate to find a co-founder who, though she has a very different story, we share this passion together.
Thank you.
And I'm Julie Fogg. And I did not grow up as the girl with the voice. I came from a family of really big personalities inside, but when people got outside, something happened that we became these like towering turtle tension sort of things. That it wasn't safe to be yourself in the outside world. And I grew up watching my mom kind of get passed over and have, even when she got her law degree, not being able to find a law job in the early 90s just because she couldn't use her voice and she couldn't live in that. It's a really big reason why I studied voice. When I figured out it was a skill set, it kind of blew my mind. And I know for myself, going through acting school and going through the process of learning my outer edges and finding how much more was in my voice, we were missing out on a lot. And I want to make sure that no one misses out on that potential that they carry inside of them. And I don't mean that in a generic woo-woo way. I mean, really, truly, there's power and there is pleasure and there is so much more to our voices than just, standing up and speaking good. So I'm really passionate in helping people who don't know that it's a skill set and think, to learn that they can show up and protect that voice in those stories, because we lose so much when we don't.
Yeah, I think we often take our voices for granted and we're not taught to think of it as a skill set. So I think that's a really important point. Bobby, as the founder of Innovation Women, you're helping women get access to more speaking opportunities, which is really important because because 2/3 of public conference speakers are men. So, what are some of the systemic reasons behind this, and what kind of opportunities does this mean women are missing out on?
Yeah, I mean, there are so many opportunities. First off, speaking begets speaking. The more speaking you do, the more speaking we will do. Event organizers often look to the stages for their next event speaker. And if historically men saturate a place, I'm not going to say dominate, saturate a space, it is so hard to break through. But there are different reasons as well. When I started Innovation Women in 2015, I surveyed 360 event managers, and half of them have zero budget for speakers, for compensating them, for paying them for travel and expenses. It's expensive to go to a conference. That means that we need to self-fund speaking. And hey, we're at a disadvantage to start because we earn less across the board. We're less likely to be in the C-suite where our employer might be picking up the tab, and we're more likely to work part-time and work for smaller companies. Like, these companies are less able to fund the travel, the hotels, the conference fees. And if we're not seen on those stages, we are not seen as the thought leaders and the experts that we are. Being on the stage drives credibility, it drives confidence, it helps you make connections with customers and partners and the media and more. Like, this is the way that so many people build their businesses, build their careers. So, when we're thinking about speaking, it's more than just getting up on stage. It is all that comes with it. When we're talking about speaking, we are being seen even before we are on that stage because we are delivering the content for that conference and an event. What's the first thing they do when you are going to be a speaker at an event? They announce that, right? They announce the keynotes when they start marketing. That means not just the people in the room see you, it's everybody in their marketing sphere. So lots of opportunities are lost because we are not on those stages.
Yeah, and it's public speaking is like any other skill, right? The more you do it, the easier it becomes. And I really appreciate the fact that you talked about funding and how women are more likely to have to self-fund these public speaking opportunities because today is equal pay day, and the wage gap has actually widened for the second year in a row. So
Ooh.
we we need to, keep moving forward because, again, like you said, the more we get out there, the more visibility we have, the more access to opportunity. So thank you, Bobby, for sharing that. Um, Casey and Julie. So at Vital Voice Training, which I highly recommend if you're looking for public speaking training, communication training, Julie and Casey are amazing. So you say that communication is more than the words you use or the sound of your voice. It's also about presence and taking up space. Can you unpack what that looks like? What do you mean by that?
Yes, I will talk about the taking up space part of this and leave Casey to talk about presence. As I mentioned, my family with their turtling tension, taking up space is, I think it's an act of resistance. We have a phrase that we use, let your butt be big, which is both a rallying cry and also a physical directive. And what it basically means is that so often we micro contract in the world, whether it's because we're paranoid of our actual physical size or just trying to, be accommodating, be less friction in the world. And let your butt be big reminds you that that's your foundation. We can let the furniture take our weight. We don't need to be polite to the furniture, and we don't need to apologize for existing in physical space. So that for me really encompasses foundationally, if you will, taking space, but presence. Casey, I'll let you talk about that.
Yeah, as I was thinking about this question, Holly, we've been talking recently about introspection and how certain people have exempted themselves from needing to be introspective. And I think most women are deeply introspective. They are very always thinking about their effect on the world, thinking about how they show up, thinking about what other people think of them. It's what we're taught to do from the moment that we enter this world. And the problem with that, or the challenge of that when it comes to presence, is that when we're sucked into our own heads, thinking always about what it is that we're doing, it's really hard to be present in the world and responding to the real-time things that are going on. And I think as long as we are caught in that endless unwinnable game of double binds that I was talking about earlier, and trying so hard to squeeze into this narrow box or walk this impossible tightrope, we can't actually fully be present with our stories, with ourselves, with our audience, with what we want to do. So we talk a lot about the difference between preparation brain and performance brain. And something I want to offer is that, like, we do our preparation, we think about our story, we practice, we rehearse, we are conscious and intentional and artistic and creative. But in the moment, we have to be able to drop all of that and just do the thing, like do what we're here to do with the people that we're doing it with. And that dance of presence requires us to be very brave and to let go of control a little bit, which, if I know my high performing women out there, letting go of control is occasionally terrifying, but it's also like a prerequisite for truly showing up. And that's what I want more women to do, because as we've already stated so many times, when more women do this, it unlocks opportunities. It unlocks even just seeing another woman on stage, letting her butt be big, taking up space, might give that woman watching the courage to do the same. And that's what I want.
I love that. Yeah, the more women we see, taking up space and owning their stories, I think the more it normalizes it for the rest of us. And that's why I think the work, especially like Deborah does and Anne Cecile and both of you do, in terms of really helping women understand. I know we're going to get into this later. Understand their story and own it and know what their values are and find their center so that they don't overthink everything else because they have such a strong, grounded center that they're able to show up in presence. I just think that's really, really important and sacred work. Dr. Gassimasari, so you're a LinkedIn top voice, the author of 4 books, including the new Rise and Resist, How to Reclaim Workplace Equity and Justice, and a Forbes contributor who has written more than 500 articles. I don't know how you do. So what is your journey to owning and using your voice so prolifically?
Yeah, it's definitely been a journey for me, because in the spirit of this panel, which is the power of women owning their stories, I've shared this story before, but I had a situation in 2023 that happened where I wrote a Forbes article. It was centered around my previous book, which is called Decentering Whiteness in the Workplace. And it looks at white dominant culture and how it impacts our systems and structures at work. I wrote an article for Forbes about it, and Forbes tweeted about the article, and it went viral on Twitter. And the then Ohio Senator J.D. Vance tweeted about it. And he tweeted about me, and he said that he was disgusted by the article, I was racist, and that he was going to investigate my consultancy to see whether Ohio had actually given me any money. And him tweeting about the article caused a barrage of just like insults and death threats and all of that in my inbox. And at the time, I was also pregnant. And it was a lot that was happening all at one time. And my book had just come out. And what I ended up doing was kind of cowering because that had never happened to me. I've written articles that make people mad, but not to this extent where I'm receiving death threats in my email. And I was scared. And I decided not to tell the story of what happened. I shared a little bit, but then I kind of went into a cocoon. And for the last like 2.5 years, I haven't really been open or shared a lot about what happened. And, we know now JD Vance is the vice president. And so I think I was scared. And I know that there's a lot of women that are watching this who've had experiences that are scary and that feel terrified with telling, their story. I was watching a clip about a woman who experienced sexual abuse, and she was sharing what had happened at an award show. And I was like, that must have been so terrifying for her to share. But I think it's so important what happened to me and what happens to so many people. I think just highlights how important it is for us to share our stories, because these people who are in power, many of them want to silence us and they want us to stop telling our story because they know the power of storytelling. They know how transformative it can be when we share our stories and how they can resonate with people and how it can really just change people's lives. And so I would say that you should never be afraid to tell your story in ways that feel authentic to you. And I'm at a place now in my life where I feel more comfortable sharing. I'll go on any platform and say this is what happened to me and I was able to make it through and this is what I did to protect myself and keep myself safe. And I hope that in sharing my story other people feel like it gives them permission to tell their story. So I think even when you're scared, I think that is oftentimes the most powerful time to share and tell your story.
Well, thank you for your bravery in telling your story and not backing down. I mean, these are silencing mechanisms that we're seeing, unfortunately, too, for the very point of keeping people from telling their stories. But there's power in the collective, and the more of us that show up and continue to tell our stories and to tell the truth, the stronger our democracy will be. So that's my tangent. Um, Thank you. Deb, at the Be Her Collective, you help women rewrite their stories to better reflect who they really are. What advice can you give on how women can let go of all this societal conditioning that Casey was talking about and step into the leading role in their story?
I want to start with where I'm going to end. So a question that I often ask the women that I work with, which can help to be like a circuit breaker or a way to be able to see or turn a corner for themselves, is to ask, what would the heroine do? What would the lead character right now do? And to begin to ask themselves that question. And the reason I landed on that question is because in the dominant narrative, which we all know because we've been living in it for generations, in the dominant narrative, women by default are cast as either supporting role, victim, or sidekick for the most part. And whether that's conscious or unconscious, because that works for the dominant narrative. It's like, let's keep the dudes at the top and the gals down the bottom or over to the side or completely disempowered. Right? And I believe we are currently, like we're doing it right now in this conversation, weaving a new narrative right now. It's going to take some sweet time, but we're excellent weavers and storytellers. So this is what we're doing. And so rather than paying attention to the dominant narrative, actually placing the focus on the new narrative, because in the new narrative, the woman gets to decide that she's the heroine of the story. And that's a part of our power, our personal power, that is actually for us to decide. And I know this like in blood and bone, because I was like literally shocked when I realized, look, I've just spent years of my life in supporting role. I was like, I need an Oscar for my performances in supporting role. I've done an excellent job of supporting so many people in my life, supporting other people's businesses, supporting. And it gave me value. It gave me a sense of the world understands me. But I also, the whole time, there was just a little stone in my shoe. I was like, there's something not quite right. Something not quite right. And then when I had there was literally a moment where I was like, whoa, hold on. I'm not in heroine status. So I first shifted it for myself. So I started to ask myself, what would she do? Let me be her. This is why I'm in the Be Her Collective, because I started that for myself. If I want to be her, what do I need to do? How do I need to think? Because it's an inside job. Our stories are actually creating our neuro pathways, how we communicate, how we weave the world, how we all understand the world. And when you understand story, which we all do here, and we all do actually, because we live inside stories, it's the lead character that we're following. It's the lead character, where it's the hero or the heroine that we're following. And it's their problem that we want to solve. We want to see if they're going to solve it. It's also their way that they manage an obstacle or a challenge, which we're with them in that. And so choosing to put yourself in heroine status means you're putting yourself in the personal power position of the next move is mine to make. I'm the one driving this story forward. And when we can drive the story forward from the inside out, it then means we have some power over what happens next in the story. And so I like to invite women to ask themselves, what would the heroine do? And I also just want to put a cherry on top here. By promoting yourself to heroine, nobody else in your life needs to be demoted. Because women need to hear that, because there's something about the permission. I'm allowed to be the lead. I'm allowed to be on top of my list. Yeah, you are. You absolutely are. And it doesn't mean anyone else in your life suddenly doesn't get enough or needs to be less than. It just means, like we've already heard it, like taking up the space, literally on the stage, or allowing your butt to be big, or allowing what really, really hurt you or didn't work out well to be visible. So I just want to invite all women, just even for the rest of the day, just give it a red hot go. What would the heroine do?
And Deb, can you give like a concrete example of like what the answer to that would be? Like, what does that look like? If you're asking yourself, what would the heroine do? What does that look like in an everyday life?
Yeah. Okay. Yes, please. I'll ground it into a couple of the women I'm literally working with right now. And one of them has been so outstanding in supporting role that she has no space for herself, because there's literally people who need her now. And so being in heroine, so if you ask yourself, what would the heroine do? When that person is calling again to talk for, I just need you for 10 minutes, but an hour later, you're hearing the same problem that they spoke to you about 3 times already this week. The heroine would actually say, what is the heroine going to do next? The heroine is going to say, I've got 10 minutes. I've got 10 minutes. Or the heroine would say, what I really want to tell you is this. If this was my story, this is what I would do next. So sometimes it's about personal power, and sometimes it's about how you want to use your voice in the collective or in the public sphere. Like, what are you elevating? What are you amplifying? Whether it's through your story or through other stories that we're listening or hearing. Because I think the heroine is also here for making space for more heroine stories also. Not to be necessarily the biggest and the loudest always, because that's not all heroines. Some heroines are like quiet and still, and there's a power in that too.
Thank you for that. And thanks for the reminder that not all heroines look the same. Dr. Plummer, so you wrote the book, The Essential Guide for Counseling Black Women. And this book covers a lot about generational cycles. Can you talk a little bit about what role understanding these generational cycles have in helping women to use their voice?
Absolutely, Holly. And ladies, just for the record, I want you all to know that I have a big butt and I take up a lot of space on purpose. So I just want to put that out there. I'm over here vibing out, taking all sorts of notes, because so much of this that I've heard today matters so much to the work that I do with women in counseling them, right? So helping them to process their story, helping them to understand what narrative therapy is. And it sounds like that connects a lot with Casey and Julie's work, right? Like, you are telling them to tell their story, but there's some processing that needs to happen there. Like, how did this become their story? What parts of this story did they agree to be a part of? And what parts did they not agree to be a part of? What role did society play in this? What role did gender norms play in this? What role did messages play in this? And so that's where my work as a therapist comes in, because I'm helping folks to understand, in terms of, to your question, Holly, generational cycles, how they are who they are because of the generation that came before them, right? And the messages that were given to them. And so from a clinical psychological perspective, we talk a lot about core beliefs, the things that we have learned to believe about ourselves. It's 3 categories: the things we've learned to believe about ourselves, to believe about others that are in close proximity to us, and then to believe about the world. And what we've learned, what we've been conditioned to believe as a core belief is that we must take care of other people, right? In the book, I highlight the fact that many baby dolls are marketed to babies as young as 6 months old. So a baby girl can't even fully sit up and take care of herself. And yet she is given this responsibility to take care of somebody else, to take care of something else. And so when we get into the conversations here, it's by no surprise that we're like, yeah, we have to make ourselves the heroine. We have to see ourselves as the main character. We have to take up space. We have to do these things. And all of that is a matter of revolution, because we are going against the norm. We are going against what has been expected of. We are going against the standard. And so when we think about it from a generational perspective, many of our moms and our aunts and our older cousins and our grandparents, they taught us to do the same thing. They taught us to take care of other people. They taught us to make others the priority. And they did that as a matter of survival. That was how they survived in their generation. But we are the generation, especially those of us that are Gen X, we are the first generation that came out of women's liberation, right? So we are the generation of which all of those women that fought, we embody that, their dream. And so if we are going to be their dream, then we need to do things differently than how they did it. In the book, I highlight that we must give respect to the elders who gave us these messages, because they gave us these messages as a matter of survival. And yet we still have to find our own way and our own voice in this new world and in this new society, right? And that means that we have to create that as well. So when we think about those core beliefs and those generational cycles, we recognize that a lot of it comes from observation instead of talking, because you live the first 3 years of your life without language, right? Like you are just absorbing and observing the world. And so it's important for us, those messages were not always intentionally given to us. There was a lot of role modeling that was happening, and then there were some side conversations. But we must be intentional about breaking that cycle, right? It's not a curse, because it wasn't necessarily bad. The intentions of the folks that gave us these messages were good. And so it's not a curse, but we must be intentional. And that's where counseling comes in addition to the work that the ladies here are talking about, because we are building up these skills, but we also have to process the fears that we have in taking up space. We also have to process the fear of retaliation. We also have to process what happens if somebody actually does retaliate, and what does it mean for us? As Black women in particular, if somebody retaliates and we lose our job, like many Black women are now, it means that the whole family is financially affected, especially because most Black women are the financial breadwinners of their family for a number of different reasons based off of our education and the way economy has been set up. And so there are true real life fears that paralyze us that we have to be able to process. I think we also need to be able to process the fact that many of our elders gave us messages and were really strict around those messages, but forgot that those messages only applied to their particular generation and was part of their survival. And we have to be able to process as well. When I think about it, it goes back to kind of what Casey and Julie were saying earlier around skills. In the Essential Guide, there is a chapter that's specifically dedicated to understanding generational cycles. And it is in that chapter where I mentioned the necessary skills to be able to break a cycle, the communication skills, a 6-step process, a 5-step problem-solving process, a 6-step restorative conversation process, and tons of journal prompts that we need to be able to be processing through, thinking through, being introspective, which really means that we are examining ourselves. Reflection means we're looking at the past and what happened there, or looking at a mirror. But introspection means that we are going deep inside and we are examining who we are, how did we become this way, what do we want to keep and is helpful for us, and what now needs to be released because it no longer applies. The more we keep doing something that doesn't apply, we are hurting and poisoning ourselves. So we must be intentional about breaking these generational cycles, because it made sense for our elders, but it doesn't always make sense for us. And as we are role modeling, it's not going to always make sense for the next generation that comes behind us. And we have to be aware and acknowledging that. So shout out to my almost 22-year-old daughter who is in the midst of this with me as we together are breaking cycles and understanding what this means. And super excited about the work in the book. So as we're talking about women, encouraging everyone to pick up that book, because there's so much richness in it for us as women, as we are understanding who we are, and we are creating newfound freedoms, and we are processing traumas that have come simply because we are women, right? Like outside of our control, but simply because we are women. And I'm going to stop there, Holly, because again, I have a big butt and I take up a lot of space. So I need to, let it be known. But yes, indeed. Thank you for the question. And again, thank you for allowing me to be here with everyone today.
Yeah, and I mean, it takes a lot of courage to use your voice. It takes a lot of courage to tell your story, and it takes a lot of courage to go against the norms, right? That we were taught, like you were saying. I don't know if you have like any advice. I know your book has the frameworks for it, but if you could just offer one piece of advice, how on women when it comes to going against the grain and standing up because it is uncomfortable.
I'm a woman who 100% believes in community, and believes in the village, right? And that's demonstrated in so many areas of my life. Onyx, it has 44 staff members and 40 of us are women. I am a department chair at a predominantly women university, right? It's historically women. I am a member of a sorority, right? Like I'm doing all these things. I believe in women, and I believe that with that courage, and I step outside, I need a soft place to land back. And it usually means I need to land back with some sisters, right? I need to land back with some more women. So if there's one piece of advice, or maybe it's two, it's connected, it's go out and do it. I think Nike used to say that, right? Just do it, and have a group of women that you could fall back on. Have a group of women where you could come back and say, hey, sis, that was hard as heck. You know what? I stood up to my boss when there was microaggression, and that was hard as heck. And right now, I just need some comforting words, right? Or, you know what? Somebody mistreated me in this particular type of way, and I put in a very firm boundary, and they did not like that boundary. And I'm feeling a little guilty because I had to put in a boundary. I feel guilty because I made them uncomfortable. And I know that's that generational social gender norm BS that's been placed on me, but this is how I feel. Can you give me a little space to land, right? Can you give me a little comfort? And women get it. We don't even always have to say it. We're just like, to Casey's point around being intuitive and introspective. Sometimes we just get on the phone with our friend like, girl, I hear it in your voice. What happened? You know what I mean? Like, so it would be two things. Just do it. Be courageous and just do it. And then have your group of friends that you consistently rely on. Do not feel that you can't talk about it. Talk about it, because we all get it. We understand it. And even though we may not received it and experienced it the exact same way you did, we have experienced something along the way where we can hold space and show you love and restore you when society has been trying to take away from you.
Yeah, and I love that idea or this concept of community. It's so important. Women have been gathering since the dawn of time. And I think that's why these groups, these conversations, women getting together, there's so much power in that. And it just, when it comes to the workplace, like ERGs, groups of women, they're just very, very important because, again, there is strength in the collective. And that was great advice that if you want to go against the norm, just do it. And make sure you tap into the strength of your community. Thank you, Dr. Plummer. And Cecile at BF Media Lounge. So we're going back to narratives and going back to the media. You believe that what we see in the media can shift our mindsets and like even how we show up in the world. And I would love to hear from you about what ways having women media that is women led and that portrays positive masculinity can actually shape our larger culture.
Thank you, Holly. I just wanted to say, if you allow me to comment, I wanted to give Dr. Gassam Asari a big virtual hug because I'm in Barcelona, because I was very moved by your story. I just wanted to say, I'm sorry you went through this. And it was interesting, again, if you allow me, because when Casey was talking about, expressing her voice and stuff like that, but it could be dangerous. And this is a story also what Deborah was saying, and Dr. Plummer also, like about the narratives. And an interesting thing is, like in Europe, for during the Middle Ages and maybe for a very long time, there was the witch trials. Whole generations of women being completely traumatized by that. How they killed so many women. 80% were women, 20% were men, which I'll go back to and then this was also transported to the United States, which also affected how you were. I mean, back then it was like, for example, if crops were not growing that year or it wasn't raining, it was probably because women were dancing that year, and that's why we burn them, and now we don't say that anymore, of course. But what Dr. Assam Sar is showing us is that, we burn the witch now through social media, we send emails and things like that. So I think this is going back to what Dr. Plummer was saying, to what Deborah was saying. It's just all linked about all these narratives I hear that came back from a long, long time ago, and there's a price to pay. And it's true that if we can have this representation, it's just the fear, hopefully it becomes mainstream. That's the idea of having this narrative. The more we do that, the more we show that we can do this, and there are less and less consequences, because if it becomes mainstream, then we're no longer outliers, And with BF Media Lounge, the reason, positivity was a big thing, because I knew we live in a negative society, but also women are not represented. There's another thing. And often what happens in toxic masculinity and patriarchy, where women are not represented, we're like a bird. It's a Baha sort of a metaphor. I'm not Baha, but I quite like this metaphor of the bird flying with just one wing. Usually it's the masculine one. And then what we usually do is, like, we try to fly with the other wing, which is the feminine one. And oftentimes we are sort of unbalanced. And I thought, with the other issue we have beside underrepresentation of women, is the fact that we promote and we celebrate toxic masculinity. We put men in power. It could be not just politicians, it could be corporations. It's just, we celebrate that, sadly, and those traits. And when I talked before that, we receive only 26% women in the news media where we're represented. In terms of toxic, positive masculinity, I tried to find statistics to find out how much of that we find out in the media, and there were no statistics on that, so which I found really, really interesting. So I think the idea is, like, the more we talk about these stories, and now with BF Media Lounge, we also invite men to contribute, for us as well, women, to heal our own masculinity as well, because there's a lot of fear around masculinity with women. And then, so that's why also we have an eggplant called Boris as our mascot, because he's like speaking, because when I'm speaking, people don't listen, but when Boris speaks, it's like, you can't be mad at an eggplant called Boris. So so that's the idea. But basically, this is it. It's to become mainstream. The more we talk about this story, the more we become comfortable. And hopefully the story that Dr. Gassam Asari was saying, and also Dr. Plummer, and everyone said, like, we become the heroine, they become mainstream. So we're not so scared anymore, because we have generations of, like, very, it's scary. I remember my mother as well, I think it was the same, saying, oh, you can't do this, you can't do that, this stuff you can do. We were all brought up that way. It's just, like I said, it's a generational thing, like you were saying as well. So yeah, that's how I think we can, change narratives and.
It's interesting, you brought up the witch trials, and that was another mechanism to keep women from gathering, because there is power in women gathering together. And I also like what you said about the bird flying with one wing, because all of us, men and women, have both masculinity and femininity in us. And so the issue is masculinity isn't bad, it's beautiful. It's the patriarchy and that system that we're operating in, that is damaging. And so I really love the way that you unpack that for us. I always like to end with an action step that, our audience can take away after the panel is over. And so, what is one action step or micro progression, as we call them at Consciously Unbiased, that leaders of any level can do to help ensure that women's voices are being equally heard and centered?
Want me to kick it off?
Yes, Bobby, go for
All
it.
right. So my theme, aside from visibility equals opportunity, which yeah, Holly, is say yes to public speaking. You get invited, you say yes. Get comfortable with the idea of public speaking. Think about what you would talk about before the invite comes in. What are you passionate about? Seek out the opportunities. Position yourself as a leader, as an expert, even if you self-identify as an introvert, which, by the way, is more about how we, yes, we recover than whether we are good, powerful speakers. You owe it to yourself, but you also owe it to the next generation. They need to see us on stage. So say yes.
Say yes. I love it. The best piece of advice. If you get asked, say yes. Thanks, Bobby. Who wants to jump in next?
I can jump in. Something I think about, and Holly, you've done such an excellent job today, facilitation. When you're in a position of leadership, you can really help set the stage, the conditions for success for the people in the meeting through facilitation, whether that's kind of giving a little bit of a silence to those who are talking too much and opportunities for those who don't speak up to speak up. There's a lot of power in that.
Hmm. Thank you, Julie. And I'm so proud of us. We've stuck to our timing.
I'll jump in to add to what Julie shared. I think intentionality is really important. I think leaders also have to understand these disparities. So I think the education piece is important. I don't think that people who don't move through the world as women don't understand what women have to go through. I was watching this video of this man who had like a simulator, some kind of device that simulated menstruation so he could see what women go through. And he was like, oh my gosh, women have to do this every single month for decades and decades. And so I think people who don't move through the world as women or femmes don't understand. So the education has to be there. And I think once there's that understanding that there are so many disparities that women experience in the workplace, I think there has to be intentionality around creating spaces and more opportunities for women. I don't think I push back against the idea that we have to lean in more and that the onus should not fall on the victim. It should not fall on women to do more, but it should fall on those in positions of power to make space and be intentional about uplifting women and uplifting women's voices.
Right. Women don't need to be fixed. The systems do. So thank you for that reminder.
I want to add to that because on that note, I want to talk about feedback, especially for leaders. Women and people of color get disproportionately unspecific, impression-based feedback, particularly on their communication and on their personality. If you cannot think of multiple specific examples of what it is that you're talking about, what you'd like to see less of in someone who is working for you, then you don't have good feedback to give. People think your X is not good feedback. Feedback needs to be specific and actionable. And if you are on the receiving end of feedback, I want to give you the gift of not all feedback is good feedback. And maybe you don't need to spin out on this. Maybe you can just say, thank you, and bless and release.
Mhm. Not all feedback is good feedback. That's a great one to remember.
Yeah, I want to add, inspired by this story and all of the stories, because I think we've just woven a story here as the storytellers, is find those places where you can safely begin to share your story. Like if you haven't spoken out loud, it's not the time to hit the microphone. It's the time to find the spaces where it feels good. So for the last 5 years, I've had a community for women so that we can reclaim our intuitive wisdom and step into heroine status and all of that. And one of the things that the women have taught me is less teaching and talking, Deb, let the women speak. Let the women speak. Now that we're in a circle, now that we're in a safe space, let that be the space for the stories to be. And then what I've found in the last couple of years is leaders are emerging out of our community because it's been safe for them to share the stories inside the community, to get used to, what does it sound like when I speak as the heroine? And am I going to be okay the next day? Because if we don't know how it is, we need to be able to do it in safe spaces first, and to be able to build from the inside out and to reclaim these sacred spaces, which over generations they took away from women. Like, more circles, please, women, more circles, less straight lines and edgy boxes, more circles.
And thanks, Deborah, for creating those safe spaces for women to practice sharing their stories so they get more comfortable doing so.
I think I'm next. I'm not sure.
Yeah.
I was saying it's funny about connections. It's a big one for women and community, which is chapter 5 in my book as well, Reboot Your Story. But another thing is internalized misogyny that unfortunately affects women. And I'm a big advocate of easy peasy tips that we can do every day. And I think one we can do is support women on a daily basis. So, you know, if you see somewhere on LinkedIn or social media, don't just like something, post something underneath or repost. That's the virtual aspect, you know, if you can, but also if in real life, if you're going, I mean, I have a friend, she's done a one-woman show. I've gone 3 times, and every time I try to bring people. So in real life as well, we try to bring more people to, you know, women's event to support and build community, because I've done that with people women I didn't really know before, you know, so expanding. So that creates sort of a goodwill as well by doing that. You just support for the sake of supporting. And then that's how you create community. And that's how together we amplify our voices. So I think it's something that we can do, like I said, on a daily basis. That's not too taxing, because I think we're all very, very busy. And anyway, I found that really useful for me to do that anyway.
Yeah, that's great advice. The amplification effect. If we're all amplifying each other and then other women are amplifying each other, that can have a really big impact on visibility and therefore opportunity.
Yeah, if I could just jump in real quick. I know we're about to end, but I think I have a couple of ideas, right? So for us as women, make sure that we increase our own self-awareness. We've been talking for almost an hour, and I'm sure there are things that you've picked up on that feel really good, and also some things that may feel like a rub. Go back and process those rubs, right? Go back and increase your self-awareness around that, which means that you need to be able to process those core beliefs and process the messages that your elders have given to you as well, to see what needs to stay and what needs to be let go of. I think it's also, like we are all saying, be intentional about building your community of like-minded women who can support you. Like-minded means that you all are thinking around some of the same topics, but it doesn't mean that you all act it out the very same way. Everybody can be different, but you all are supporting each other in thought processing. So you have a thought partner and a safe place to land. So increase your self-awareness and create your community intentionally. For those leaders, when you see us as women coming around and doing all of the things, make sure you create a psychologically safe environment. Include us in the environment. Teach us things that we need to learn. Listen to us when we are contributing. And when we challenge you, don't take it personally. Understand that our goal is to be better people and to help create a better environment and organization. So for the leaders, create psychological safety. And because I have a big butt, right? I love that, Julie. I'm going to also say, hire us. You don't have to do all of this work by yourself. Hire us. We are experts right here doing the work, have studied the work, know the work, and we can come into your organizations and help you make transformation. Don't sit with your group of men and try to figure this out when you have this powerful group of women right here who can do it and make sure you pay us properly on Equal Pay Day. You hear what I'm saying? So there's some things for us women, and there's some things for us as leaders as well. All right. Thank you.
Yes.
Happy Women's History Month.
Thank you, Dr. Plummer. Okay, advice, hire us and pay us what we're worth. Love it. All right. I just want to say thank you again to all of you for sharing your voice and for sharing your wisdom. There's so much wisdom in this group. And before we go, just if the audience wants to follow you or learn more about you, where can they go? We'll start with Julie.
You can find us. Our website is vitalvoicetraining.com. We're not been super active on Instagram, but you can find us both personally on LinkedIn. I'm Julie Fogg, Fogh.
Thanks, Julie. Deb?
Oh,
Oh, you're on mute.
I had a moment. So the BeHerCollective.com, but where I share most of my stories and my teaching and also invite other women to share is on Substack. So the Be Her Collective on Substack is my major digital playground.
Thank you. Bobby?
innovationwomen.com, and I weekly share fun and sometimes silly stories, always going for the humor, on innovationwomen.com, our newsletter. So, and also everybody's invited to join us for Speaker Friend Fridays. It's a weekly Zoom call with literally dozens of people talking about saying yes.
So if you're looking for community, Speaker Friend Fridays. I love that. Dr. Gassim, sorry.
I'm everywhere as Janice Gassam Masare. So if you're on LinkedIn, I'm on LinkedIn a lot. I'm on Instagram a lot. I'm on YouTube. If you search my name, all of my stuff will pop up.
Okay. And Cecilia?
Hi, bfmedialounge.com. We're also very active on social media at bfmedialounge.com, and we're currently raising funds for our first short film called The Penis Conundrum, because we're about bold stories as well. So if you want to try and find out more about that on BF Media Lounge or at BF Media Lounge on social media.
Oh, definitely check that out. Thank you. Dr. Plummer?
Absolutely. I kind of feel like Dr. Janice. You could put my name in any search engine, all of my work will show up. So Onyx Therapy Group, absolutely, on all socials, and Dr. Plummer on all socials. And our website is Onyx Therapy Group. And the name of my book is The Essential Guide for Counseling Black Women. And that can be found in all major and independent bookstores as well. So here I am.
Amazing. Casey, I think we got Vital Voices training. So thank you, everyone. And thank you to the audience for joining. Happy Women's History Month.
Happy Women's History Month. Thank you, Holly. Thanks, ladies.
Bye.